What's good in the hood, YouTube? This is Crazy Samurai. I want to bring another video. Today I'm bringing a video on something that I wanted to actually post yesterday, but unfortunately I'm posting on Monday due to the fact that I was busy all day Sunday, and I wanted to post it Saturday. But problem is that where I go to, I'm in college, and the thing is that I don't have a TV regularly where I can just watch the episodes as they come out, and also I do things a lot of times on Saturday, so it's not as easy as it is when I'm home. So because of that, unfortunately that's how things are for now. So I have the information that I need, so next episode I should be able to release it on Sunday for the next couple of weeks. So just be aware of that, and then eventually I'll like the last couple episodes I should be able to release them the day they come out, just so you're aware. But I wanted to talk about episode 2 because I'm sure plenty of people saw it and they want to hear some opinions, and also just in general I want to tell you guys what I feel. This episode was a pretty awesome one. I've done a few. I've already done previews talking about the first 2 episodes. For those who don't already know, obviously this episode's called Forged in Steel. The idea behind it is it's sort of a continuation, basically, of what happened in the previous episode. So what happened? So I'll go into what happens in it. For starters, we end up seeing. I'm trying to think right now. Calvin and Haley together, and they're what happens is that Calvin is trying to get his truck working while Haley's sitting in the car waiting for him to repair it, and she's there with her dog or wolf or whatever, and the wolf, by the way, is named Cody apparently, and he refers to his truck as Nitro. They constantly bring that up. So that is interesting to note. What else I have to mention is, I'm trying to think right now. So they end up doing all that stuff, and suddenly when they're talking and everything happens and all that, suddenly a whole plethora of trash and garbage just comes flying down in front of them. They don't know what it is, they don't know what to make of it, but they each go out, they each start like touching it and seeing what the heck it is, because it just comes out of nowhere. So they're like, what is this? They feel it has like some weird goo on it. It's kind of nasty. Calvin even jokes maybe it's an alien creature just to mess with Haley, and it really is. And something that happens is that he ends up like throwing something. It's a big ball, which is really Mick. Basically, he shapeshifted into an armadillo that's folded up or whatever, so that he could land more easily and much more safely. So that is interesting to note that that's where Mick landed. So what happens is that they end up meeting Mick. Mick's datacom isn't working, which is his communicator to communicate with Brody. He tells his whole story about how he's from space and he's lived on the Galaxy War ship, and he was a mechanic and all that stuff, and somehow he landed there. And he does all that stuff, and suddenly they're like, okay, I guess we'll take you seriously. Well, I guess we'll listen to you. And they start to believe him because they think like how else could this have happened? So what happens is that then we see what happens in the preview that I've shown, the more recent one that I posted, basically where it's like the Bashers are come and they're trying to take Mick back to the spaceship. And Calvin and Haley have to fight them off, and they end up doing that, and eventually they escape. At that point, what happens is that we see Galvanox and all the other villains talking about it, and how like there's all these teenagers and stuff, and they want to deal with the Power Rangers and all that. So what happens is that he ends up telling Cosmo, he ends up telling all the villains at the Galvanox Warrior show audience, for those of you, if you want to become a Galaxy Warrior like I am, a Galaxy Warrior champion like I am, if you defeat them, you are guaranteed the same position as I am. So you are like accredited in the same regard. Obviously, I'm still the leader, but you have that recognition, and it's guaranteed. And so that's obviously a big incentive for all these villains that wants to do that, and that basically starts the whole entire process. It's a smart idea because it's a good way to like actually create logical reasoning for them to do it, rather than just being like, oh, they're villains and they're just going to attack them. Like, no, it's for a cause. Like they want to become a Galaxy Warrior champion, which is smart. I like that they chose to do it that way, so that there's like an actual meaning and purpose and understanding behind it. So then what happens is that they end up traveling to their school, and I just want to make sure I'm doing this in the right order. I'm not 100% sure if this is the exact order that it worked out, but I believe that then what happens is we end up seeing the continuation of Sarah, Preston, and Brody. They end up going to the Brody's house and looking for the ninja steel, which Brody explains the whole story about how his father ended up finding the Ninja Nexus prism encased inside of some ninja steel, and his father ended up converting that into special ninja stars, and his brother, who's the one that went missing and we didn't know where he was and all that, and when he went to look for his brother, he wasn't there. His brother's name is Aiden, so that's important to note, obviously, because we were wondering like, who's his brother. So that's his name, and the statue, the trophy that was mentioned, that was inside of the trophy case at the Summer Cove school that each of them go to. If you remember from the first episode, all the trophies are won by Victor Vincent, the guy that works with Monty. And the thing is that the one trophy that was noted in the first episode, was the one won by Dane Romero, who is actually Brody's father. So there's a reasoning behind this that they end up finding out when suddenly they end up opening up a chest that was buried underground. And when they open up the chest, that's where they think the ninja steel would be found. But actually, it's a picture that the trophy is featured in, and they realize maybe Eden hid it inside of there. Now, let's go back to what happens with Haley and Mick. What happens is that then they go to the school, and Mick is told by the school principal, like, she thinks that he is supposed to be the teacher that was supposed to take the auto repair shop, the auto shop class teacher role. And apparently she thinks that he goes along with it. Apparently he becomes the teacher for that class, and everything's going fine. Apparently he's now the teacher, which is oddly convenient, obviously, but it works. And so then he's in charge, and he's, they also try, like, Calvin and Haley try to make him blend in. Like, they give him an outfit that basically makes him look like a mechanic, and he already has most of that already going for him, but they add like a jacket onto him, which is just another added feature, so it works well. Then what happens is that Mick ends up talking to Vincent and Monty, and Vincent ends up having this car that has this really nice paint job that's completely like nice and clean white, and mentions this whole idea is that it's one of a kind and all that. Something that happens is that the car actually rides over a hose which is containing blue paint, and the hose ends up bursting. The blue paint goes all over the shirts, Vincent and Monty, and then Mick says like more like three of a kind, because even the car has blue paint at that point. And so then at that point it's three of a kind, and then what happens is that they end up doing all that, and since the paint is not, so that's where the paint goes, and that's important. We learn that later. So then what happens is that suddenly they manage to fix his communicator mix. But then what happens is that we end up seeing back at on Brody, Sarah, and Preston's side, we've read by, I forgot to mention that, that apparently a buzz cam was actually tracking all the information that they were saying and hearing all the information about the ninja steels and all that, and how they apparently think that it's at the school where that trophy was, and Sarah knows exactly where it was and even mentioned specifically where it was. and they realize where the buzz cams are there, and then they're like, uh-oh, now the villains know, and now we know. So then they have to communicate. So then when Mick finally gets his communicator working, which I might add is basically one of the ninja stars, but like with like a silverish kind of paint, which is interesting. At that point, since Mick and the others are there, they end up having to go to the trophy and try to get it, and they end up finding out that yes, inside of there is the ninja steels. The ninja steels are actually ninja stars or whatever to say. So then at that point, what happens is that we end up seeing the villain for the episode, which is Ripper Rat, which I talked about in the first preview for the second episode. And suddenly they end up introducing him through the Galaxy Wars presentation, and then suddenly he attacks them while they're trying to get away or whatever. And Haley and Calvin have to defend Mick, and just in general, Mick is being attacked, and so are they, and they're getting weakened. But eventually, the Ninja Nexus Prism shows up. The yellow and the white Ninja Power Star end up glowing, and they take their power stars. So Calvin becomes yellow, and Haley becomes white. At that point, what happens is that the other Rangers show up, and then Brody says, "All right, do what we do," and like he even says, like, "Now you're Power Rangers," and all that. And what happens is they're like, "What's that?" And then like Sarah and the others like say like, "Oh, just wait. If he says it, you'll think that he's crazy. Just watch and see." And so then at that point, what happens is that then they do like the hand thing out to suddenly get their morphers ready and all that. And the thing that's smart, because I want to know this because it's so important, because a lot of the recent shows have been lacking this, and I'm glad that they actually paid attention and made this detail known. You know, they knew at that point about the morphers. I'm talking about Sarah and Preston, but the other two didn't know, and they didn't make it out like follow our leads and just like make it out like it's no big deal. No, when they transformed and when they got their morphers and everything, they reacted. They actually paid attention. It wasn't just like, let's just go with it and then react after the fact. Like, you know, them actually somehow managing to summon out, they've reacted to it. They actually respond to it. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes they just follow the lead and just somehow know it, as though like they should just know it. I'm saying this because it has happened multiple times in prior seasons where they just respond to that whole entire introductory scene like it's no big deal. I'm glad that Ninja Steel actually addresses that, because it's so important that they actually make the effort to address, this is new, this is weird, I've never experienced this before, you know? Especially just somehow managing to summon that morpher, like that's special. So that ends up happening. They end up morphing and they end up fighting Ripper Rat, and they end up using the different modes of their attacks. And this is where the preview comes in. So suddenly, like Haley says, I wonder if a weapon has, if our morpher has different modes to it. So suddenly they use the bow mode, which is what Pink and White use. They end up using the blade mode. I think that's Calvin who does it, and then Preston uses the claw mode. So those are the three modes, and then what happens is that Brody comes in with the red ninja spin attack and tries to beat him up. Ripper Rat gets beaten, and then we learn how they make the monsters grow. In this case, it's like a voting thing. It's like, should we make him have another chance? And then they're all like, and they all cheer, and then suddenly he gets gigantified, which is what they refer to it as. Suddenly, at that point, they end up hearing a message. They end up seeing a spiritual image of the Zords that they're supposed to have, and Mick knows about them. He's heard about them. It's not like he has like wise knowledge or whatever. He's just heard about them. He's heard from legends and rumors. Understand this now. He is not necessarily like some figure that has had prior knowledge otherwise. He just has heard about them. Keep that in mind. Because it's not like Keeper where like he's been guarding them for ages. You know, you understand that. It's important to make that point. So then what happens is that they end up gaining the ability with the Ninja Nexus Prism to get special power ninja stars, which represent their Zords, which then allows them to use their Zords. At that point, we end up seeing them. We see the Robo Red Zord, which is reds. Obviously, Nitro is yellows. The Zoom vehicle is pinks. the Cody X, I think it was white, and then the Dragon Zord was blues. So then what happens is they all start attacking, using their abilities, fighting together, helping each other out, and then eventually what happens is they end up using their frog guns to actually defeat the opponent rather than just beating them up with their individual Zord attacks, which is what actually happens, which is nice that they actually do have an episode where they do have their individual Zord attacking, which is something that's fortunate because the Japanese footage actually allowed them to do that, because not every single season does that. Not every single season in Japan allows you to do that, and that's part of the reason why it's nice when they do that. Like, I think the last season where they actually gave that chance really probably was Super Mega Force, I feel. So that is nice. I might be wrong though. It might have been Dino Charge, but I remember it more so with Mega Force, not Super Mega Force, Mega Force specifically. So it is nice to note that. So then what happens is that eventually they defeat Ripper Rat, and they end up celebrating, and they end up talking about what they're going to do with their base. They end up choosing that the base will be the paint area, which apparently is not working anymore, and that's due to Vincent, Victor Vincent, driving the car over the paint device, and so it's out of order. At that point, the thing is that the principal is going to trust the teacher, which is Mick in this case, so they can use that as their secret base, hide the Ninja Nexus Prism, and do all the other stuff, which is good. So they're celebrating, they're ready to actually create a base and develop it out and do things, and Mick will still be a teacher, which is interesting, good, and it should be a pretty awesome thing. I'm very curious to see how the base is going to look next episode, of course, but yeah, so that's what's going on there. Then what happens is that we end up seeing Brody and Sarah talking to each other, and Sarah mentions the fact that wasn't there 6 ninja stars, and the thing is that the 6th one is missing, so they wonder who could have taken it in between the time that Calvin and Haley got theirs, and they're very curious. That's where that part ends. Then we get to see the villain side of things, where Galvanox is upset and everything like that, and Cosmo comes over to Galvanox and says, like, the rings are great, they love the Power Rangers, and what happens is that Galvanox is like, I don't care about them, they shouldn't be loving them, we need to defeat them, even though actually the rings are really good. So then what happens is what we end up learning, the one that actually stole the gold Ninja Power Star was Madame Odie. We actually see it, so she actually has it. Now, I'm curious as to what that means. I'm curious if maybe Aiden was captured and turned evil, possibly. That might be one path that they might choose to do with Aiden. They might make him the Gold Ranger, but they might make him evil. We don't know yet, because it is interesting to note that it was stolen by a villain. So that's why I kind of want to imagine that being the case. That or something else could happen along the lines of maybe they have to defeat a villain and eventually they get it back, and then maybe Aiden's the one that gets it back and then he gains the power in the process. That could be a possibility. The other thing you have to keep in mind is that Madame Odie is the only one that actually knows, like the only one that actually has it and even knows about it. So that is important to keep in mind. It wasn't like she showed it to Galvanox. So that is going to be an interesting thing. Maybe they destroy her. Not clearly stated yet, so it should be interesting to see how things will progress in that sense. So I'm pretty curious now, because that is a pretty interesting setup. Overall, I think that this was a really cool episode. I think there was a lot of really unique things, a lot of things that were important. Forgot to mention this also, they even addressed the fact that, whoa, sorry about that, guys. For some reason my camera just kind of flipped out. Anyway, going back to things, sorry about the freak out moment there. What I think, I just want to say this now, it's pretty nice. They address certain things. I forgot to mention this other point. It's kind of important. They did actually address, oh god, it's like everything just kind of went nuts a second ago, so it's just, alright, sorry about that, guys. Alright. So it's nice to note that they actually, address certain points, like recognizing that. They also addressed the Zords. Like they actually made the note, like, oh, this looks like my dog. This looks like my truck. Like they address things, which is important. Same with like the whole morphing and suddenly noticing things. You have no idea how many times where they just kind of like act like, no big deal. It's so important that they actually address, oh, there's a similarity. Believe me when I say this, there are so many seasons where they just pretend, they just act like, oh yeah, it's there, I don't care, like that's about it, and they just sort of are like, wow, this is so cool and all that, but they don't address like the more important point that they're kind of alluding to along the way. So happy that they do that. So happy, because that is not something that is as common as it should be. Yes, it should be common. It should be just a natural thing, but so many times over they just skip out on that and they pretend like, oh yeah, we show it, but we don't address it. So that is important. I would love to know your guys' opinions below. Were you excited for this episode? Did you like this episode? Personally, I enjoyed it a lot. I think that there was a lot of really great stuff going on. I like how the ending of the episode worked with the Gold Ninja Power Store. I'm curious as to whether or not that will be something that will be revealed more information-wise, right away next episode, or will it be something that will come in a few episodes? We are supposedly going to get gold in the 8th episode, but I'm curious as to how it's going to work. I'm also curious as to how they're going to be able to determine where Aiden is by the end of in the next couple episodes. But we'll see. I'll let you know your guys' opinions below. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, check out my Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. And I'll see you guys in the next video. So until then, guys, I'm Crazy Sarah 71, and goodbye, guys.